Hello, everyone. So, I have not filmed in a minute. I finished all of my October videos fairly early into October, so I'm sorry if I sound a little bit off. I'm finally getting into filming again. But all the links that I use for research will be down below. I now also have a link to a Google Docs form where you can submit case suggestions. That way, it'll be easier for me. It just asks a few questions like the name, if you know it, any details about the case, just that it'll be more helpful for me to locate the case if it's like a harder to find case. Because there's often times where I will look up a case and I have to put in a lot of like little details and stuff for any like news articles to pop up. So it's just little tidbits to help me find stuff. It's like 3 or 4 questions, I think, at most. Um, so that will be down there if you want to use that. But today we're going to be talking about the case of Yasmin Acree. So Yasmin was only 15 years old when she disappeared on January 16th, 2008. She was a freshman at Austin Polytech Academy and was about to start a new job. She has no history of being a runaway, but she did have a troubled past. Her mom, who is now unfortunately deceased, was a drug addict, and Yasmin and her older brother were removed from her home when they were toddlers. She spent several years in the Kentucky foster system, where this is so heartbreaking, but she was actually sexually abused and developed severe emotional and behavioral problems. In 2001, she and her brother went to live with Rose May Starnes, their aunt by marriage, and Rose adopted them in 2006. Rose says she loved Yasmin but had trouble dealing with her behavior problems and occasionally disciplined her by whipping her with a belt or locking her in the basement. And I just want to say this right now. I'm sorry, but I do not think locking a child in a basement is discipline. I think that's just straight up fucking abuse. You don't lock a child in any fucking room, basement, attic, whatever. You don't lock them anywhere. She would have been between 13 and 14, maybe 15 at this time. So still a very young teen. Like it doesn't really matter how old you are. You just don't do that to a kid. You know what I'm saying? To me, I just think it's weird that she made it a point to be like, I loved her, but I just couldn't deal with her sometimes, so I locked her in the basement. That's just straight up abuse. Sorry. I know I shouldn't talk badly because the ending to this case, but I think that was kind of gross. I just wanted to put that out there because I actually have it written in my notes, like capital letters, abuse. But continuing on, in 2007, her brother was 16, and Rose asked him to leave her home, making Yasmin the only child at the home when she disappeared. And I'm not sure why she asked her brother to leave. I'm not sure if there was like maybe a fight or whatever reason. It wasn't named anywhere, so I'm not quite sure. So, a boy named Jimmy Terrell Smith and his father lived in the second floor apartment in Yasmin's building at the time of her disappearance. They lived in the 4800 block of West Congress Parkway on the west side of Chicago and Illinois. Jimmy's dad was friends with Rose, and Jimmy moved into the building in 2005 after he was paroled from prison, where he had been serving time for attempted murder. So, following his release, he was arrested 6 times, and he admits he was always armed and sold drugs near Yasmin's apartment. He reportedly took an interest in Yasmin, and she mentioned him a few times in her diary. Rose did not tell police that he was living in her building until 2009, when he was arrested for raping 5 girls, including 2 14-year-old girls he had allegedly kidnapped. In an interview from jail, he claimed that he knew what happened to Yasmin and he was responsible for 4 murders he hadn't been charged with. So the information has not been confirmed, however, but what exactly happened to Yasmin? So I've given you all this information up to now, so what happened to her and how does Jimmy play a role? On January 15th, 2008, she went to school, and then she would go to North Lawndale YMCA, came home, and did laundry. and then went to bed. The next morning, she was gone. Rose left Yasmin home with her then live-in boyfriend, Charles Burt, for 2 days while she visited her daughter and played slots at the casino, making 58-year-old Charles the last person to have seen Yasmin. Charles said he was taking garbage out on January 16th and saw that the basement door had been forced open. The padlock was cut and the door jamb was busted. He said Yasmin was nowhere to be found and assumed she went to school early. He said he then called Rose and left her a message, and Rose said that her cell phone wasn't working correctly and she never received a call or message from Charles. So when she got home, her niece, not Yasmin, someone else, told her the house had been broken into. She had Charles fix the door, and that ruined any potential evidence that could have been there. Around 5 p.m., Yasmin failed to return home, and Rose realized that Yasmin only had a half day at school that day. And this worried her, because she still wasn't at home, obviously, and called police to report her missing. Yasmin was never seen or heard from again. Reportedly, police found a lock on a gate that had been cut behind their home. And just so you guys know, Rose actually owned the building that they lived in. Going back to Jimmy Taylor. So the thing is, she knew about Jimmy's past and still allowed him to move in. Just putting that out there. Yasmin's diary would be located, and they found excerpts referring to a Terrell, and they finally realized that Jimmy lived in the building. They started to piece together this Terrell person and Jimmy, and they believe that Jimmy and Terrell are the same person. And the thing is, the Department of Children's Services never even knew that he was in the building either. So, good job, Rose. Good job. Later, police would admit that their own officers mishandled the investigation. They failed to secure a door handle that may have held the fingerprints of a suspect. Rose led multiple prayer vigils and marches when Yasmin vanished. When she disappears, Rose sank into a deep depression, which caused her health to decline. On February 24th, 2014, Rose was found in her home, and she was dead, and it was because of natural causes at the age of 57. So, at the time she went missing, Yasmin was 15 years old, stood at about 5'1", about 125 pounds, with sandy brown hair, brown eyes, and she wears eyeglasses and cannot see well without them, but they were left behind. Her case is still unsolved and foul play is suspected. If anybody has any information, they are to contact Chicago PD at 312-746-8365. Again, that number for Chicago PD is 312-746-8365. So, what are your thoughts? So it's sad that Rose did pass away, but I'm just going to be completely honest. I don't think she was the best person. I think her ways of discipline to Yasmin were kind of disgusting. Yasmin, had a lot of trauma. She was taken from her mother's home. She was abused in foster care. She has these issues, these behavioral issues from this trauma. She needed real help. She did not need to be locked in a basement. She didn't need to be whipped with a belt. And I don't want to hear any comments saying, like, I got beat and I turned out fine. Did you really? I mean, realistically, did you? Like, she has emotional and behavioral issues. She should probably get mental health help, not be beat with a belt and locked in a basement. So that's incredibly disgusting. I think that it was also incredibly negligent of Rose to allow Jimmy to move in to that building and not even say anything until girls were raped. Like, you knew he was in prison for attempted murder, Like, I don't know about you, but if I owned a building, I would not let anybody that attempted murder live in that building. I just, I find that to be really gross. I feel like Rose definitely could have done things a bit differently because, to a certain degree, I do think that Jimmy might have had a hand in it. I mean, he could just be a weirdo that likes to admit to stuff he didn't do. He gets a high off of making people think that he did all this stuff and he didn't. We know that there are criminals that do stuff like that. They admit to things that they didn't actually do. But I don't know, just him acknowledging that he took an interest in Yasmin, and she even mentioned him. I kind of feel like maybe she got involved with him somehow to a certain degree, and he may have done something to her. I wouldn't put it past him. And maybe if she just knew him in passing and he decided to do something to her, I wouldn't be surprised because he obviously has um, the will to do that. I really think Jimmy would be like the number one suspect for me. I don't think that Yasmin would just walk off out of her life. I will say that Charles just seeing like the basement door or or window, whatever, just messed up and all of this stuff. Like, it's kind of weird that you just don't think anything else. Like, oh, she probably just went to school. Like, you don't question that. You don't look any further. To me, that's also kind of weird. So if I really had to say what I think happened, I either think that Charles had something to do with it, the way he didn't really question anything, or maybe he was just like, whatever. Or I think Jimmy had something to do with it. And we may never know. But what do you guys think? Let me know down below. Let me know your thoughts. But please be respectful. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.